Welcome to the Love Lab Podcast, a safe place to get real about sex. Whether you're a man, woman, single, or couple, this is the show for you.
We are your hosts, Kevin Anthony and Céline Remy, and we are here to guide you to go from good to amazing in the bedroom and beyond.
All right, welcome back to the Love Lab Podcast. This is episode 132, and it's titled 10 Sex Myths Everyone Thinks Are True. So we're going to actually have a lot of fun with this show because we're going to take some common sex myths and we're going to bust them. Bust it. Okay, now before we start this, I want to say there are a lot of sex myths out there. So narrowing it down to 10 actually isn't all that easy. But one of the criteria was this. There are a lot of myths out there, like you can't get pregnant in a hot tub kind of, nonsense. No reasonable adult believes that these things are true. So we did not cover any of those nonsense things. Like there's a lot of nonsense out there. We stuck to things that seem plausible, seem reasonable, and that we hear adults say somewhat regularly.
Do you think that you can get pregnant if you have your period? Is like it's not a reasonable one to have on the show?
I mean, there were so many ridiculous ones. I mean, I'm kind of drawing a blank right now on some of them because they were so bad. I was like, I couldn't even read them.
Well, technically, we are paying you a compliment because we know our audience is not 17 years old. We know you've evolved and you're going to appreciate some of these myths. But before we dive into the myths, let's give a big shout out to our sponsors, Power and Mastery. So if you want to join the secret club of men who are great in bed, then check out Power and Mastery. It is the most complete sexual mastery training for men, whether you want to have harder erections, last longer in the bedroom, or increase your sexual skills. Go to powerandmastery.com and you will find something for you. So let's start with our myth number one. And we put it number one as a reason because we hear this one a lot. Here's what goes on. People think that men want sex more than women. That's the first myth we are going to bust.
Yeah. So, first we'll talk about, what the studies say, but then I want to hear your own personal experience, Céline.
Oh my gosh. That's a totally unplanned. Like I'm going to be grilled here on the show.
That's right. So study-wise, it says about a quarter of women rate sex as very important, regardless of their age. Women in the study who highly valued sex shared the following characteristics. They were more highly educated, they were less depressed, and they had experienced better sexual satisfaction before entering midlife. So, to me, what this says is you have educated women who are not depressed and are not stressed out. And shockingly, if they're not depressed and they're not stressed and they've had good sexual experiences, they're gonna want sex. So the reason why I kind of took this is because I want to give you the floor to speak about this in a minute from a woman's perspective. But this myth has persisted for so long that men are the ones that always want sex and they want sex all the time, and women really aren't that interested and they only want sex from time to time. That is complete nonsense. Here's really what it comes down to from my point of view. Women are not interested in sex when they don't get the kind of sex that they want. But when they get the kind of sex that they want it just as much as men. And they think about it just as much as men. Okay, Miss Céline, as the show's resident female, tell us your thoughts on this.
I would say absolutely that as we go through the teenage years and hormone changes, we want to fuck as much as guys do, and probably exploring and all of this. Now, depending on the background, whether or not you have a religious background or the type of family that you're in and what you've been taught, these are all different like beliefs and pressure and peer pressure. It doesn't mean that you don't feel the need to fuck. And trust me, teenage girl and young women will have the same amount of like, I need to fuck. I went for this. Like, I remember like, I would just like have sex with a guy because I just had to have it that night. Like I would just pick somebody for that purpose. And what I do see is that then if we become more stressed out, that will take some of our desire away. And especially if we have stressful jobs, families, lots of things to take care of, people to take care of, kids, women will tend to prioritize other people sometimes and then maybe put the sex on the back burner. But it's only because of the stress. If you remove the stress, the desire is there.
I think it's important too to distinguish between the desire being there and the action. And I think that's where a big part of this myth comes from, is that men are probably more likely to try to act on the desire, where women are probably a bit more reserved when it comes to acting on the desire. It's a generality, because I know there's plenty of women that act on the desire. You know, and you rightfully said that you did at times too, but maybe you were less likely than a guy.
Well, what I do see sometimes is, like, oftentimes you're very surprised when I tell you how through the day I felt horny and I thought about having sex with you like 3 or 5 times that day. And you're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And I didn't act on it. I mean, because I was doing something else. Maybe I was editing a show, doing whatever else. And I was like, it's not the time and place for it. However, I was feeling the sexual desire. And then by the time the evening came, because I spent all my energy on doing other stuff, then I was done and not so motivated anymore. So that's definitely something that I can see happening too. And it's a very important distinction that we're bringing here between the desire and the action of itself. And I also think that later on in life, and this is also the study we chose here, because that myth is also that as women age, they want sex less. There might be a time where women will feel imbalanced. And we talked about this in our previous show on perimenopause and going through the hormonal changes, how it can affect our libidos. And yes, that could affect us for some years. But for most women, and a lot of them, after they're done going through their transition, sex becomes better, more interesting. There's no more fear of being pregnant. There's so much liberation. You don't care anymore and you're going for it.
And then the transformation to full cougar is complete. Okay, let's move on to the next one, because we got 10 that we've got to get through here. Yes. And yeah, okay. Number 2 is married older people have less sex.
It's a myth too. So something that was really cool is in doing the research, we found a study where they studied some things, and it was in Sweden, and they had done some studies in the 70s, and then they were comparing to nowadays the data. So that was pretty fascinating. And some of the things that they found was that in 1971, only 52% of married men aged 70 and up reported that they were still sexually active. I mean, it's still good. Like half of the people in the 70s were still having sex, like 70 and up. And in more recent research, that figure increased to 68%. That's amazing, And similarly, just 38% of married women over the age of 70 reported being sexually active in 1971, compared to 56% quoted in more recent research.
Okay, so we have to point out one thing here.
Yes, that I had the same thought.
You notice those numbers don't exactly add up. What this means is there are a bunch of men over 70 who are having sex with women that are not in that age group.
Yes, because I'm like, how is that going to happen?
Just to point out the big elephant in the room. Now that we've got that over with.
The other part of this was that older adults are having more sex than you may think. Of all the sexually active older adults, 25% report having sex at least once a week. That's amazing, compared with 10% in the 1970s. Not only that, but at least half of the men and women said their relationships were very happy.
I would love to know why there's such a difference between the 70s and today, because honestly, I think people were healthier in the 70s than they are now.
Well, they do say that nowadays we tend to live longer, and that also people tend to their what is labeled sexual dysfunction. So maybe in the 70s, they didn't have the Viagra, or they didn't have certain things that allow people to have sex that now is easy. Like, I don't know how much they used lube, how much they had hormonal replacement therapy, how much they had Viagra. All of these things actually allow people to have sex for longer, even when their body is not functioning the way it should.
Those are very good points. I hadn't thought about that. Then again, I hadn't really given it any thought. It just was the question that came up right now in this moment. Like, I wonder why such a difference, but those are actually good points. That's probably has a lot to do with it.
So let's talk about our myth number 3 here. Being good in bed is all about technique. So if you're a man and you've always thought that you needed to learn the triple digit tongue move so that you could really be labeled as good in bed, that's not it. That's not everything. Technique is good, but not what most people report as the thing that makes a lover great. Most report that it is trust, connection, love, presence, attentiveness, and foreplay that starts long before any physical contact. That's pretty amazing because all of these things are not technique, they're skills, they're behaviors that you learn in life. And less than 1 in 5 women indicated that sex that lasts a long time made orgasms feel better.
Yeah, this is something that we talk about all the time on the show. And I mean, no matter who you talk to, if you ask them the right questions, this is the answer that you're going to get, right? So, if you ask them a question, it's like, oh, well, does it feel better if they do such and such a thing? They'll likely say yes. But if you really dive down into it, like, what is it that made, think about the best lover you've ever had in your life and try to explain to us what made them so great.
The connection. That's the first thing that came to my mind. It's the connection. It's the intimacy in that connection.
It's always the answer that you get. So and especially for women, maybe if you were reversing it the other way and asking the men, it might be slightly different, but especially with the women, because they need to feel that trust. They need to feel that safety. They need to feel that connection and that love. That allows them to really surrender into the experience. And that is what they often report as having the most amazing sex. In fact, I've been reading a book recently by somebody that we know, actually. And one of the things that she was saying is that the pattern she noticed from the few lovers that she's female ejaculated with was that the thing they all had in common is they made her feel safe enough that she could totally surrender. Right. So these are the things. And, a lot of women would say, wow, like it's generally pretty intense when they female ejaculate. Right. So that means they were really having great sex. It's because of those, things that we would kind of call like soft skills, and that's all that connection, love, presence, /attentiveness, foreplay, all that kind of stuff.
Technique is great because it does make a difference if you know what you're doing, the anatomy, but it's not everything because you might be able to know what you're doing, but not liking it and the person can feel it. Or you might know what you're doing, but not really be present and think about something else. So if you're not there, again, it doesn't matter that you're doing the right thing. There's still a component that's missing. And those things are not technique. Yeah. Those things I can't really, they can be taught in a concept, but you still have to really experience that for yourself.
Yeah. And if you listened to our episode, How to Make Love Like a Porn Star or Not, the whole reason of the or not is because here's a guy that we interviewed who's had sex with, I think it was like 4,000 or 5,000 women. And he basically said the same thing, that it's not about technique that makes you so great.
It's about paying attention.
Yeah. So that's straight from the mouth of literally a technique expert.
Porn star. All right. Bring us myth number 4, Kevin.
All right. Myth number 4, sex burns a lot of calories. I kind of wish this one were true. But according to a study by the University of Montreal, dudes burn more than 100 calories while women burn 69 calories during sex. Compare this to a half-hour light run where findings suggest women burn about 213 calories during a jog, more than double the calories burnt from sexy times. Now, all right, here's the thing. I think you know where I'm going to go with this one. When we look at the average times that people have sex and, the average man ejaculates in, 3 to 5 to 7 minutes, give or take. I don't know how much sex they're having, foreplay wise before that, or maybe after that. But let's just say these numbers are probably skewed by the fact that most people don't have long sex. However, having said that, as a former personal trainer, I can tell you that how many calories you burn does have a lot to do with your heart rate and with how much muscular energy it takes to do something. So, if your sex is generally, she just lays there with her legs spread and he just gets on top and
pumps
a little bit. you're probably not doing as much as you think you're doing. Now, there are some people that have some really acrobatic, vigorous sex. I know there are some times, there have been one or two times I can recall where, like in doggy style, where like I was sweating and out of breath. And I'm a pretty in shape guy, you know, like I do cardio stuff. Like I can get on my mountain bike and still ride circles around people half my age, right? So I'm doing pretty good. But there were some times when I was like,
You're panting and all, yes.
and I'm out of breath. But if you're having that kind of sex, then potentially you are burning more. But in general, the myth is busted because most people, I don't think, really burn that many calories.
I don't think you should have sex to burn calories, but you should have sex to reduce your stress, because that will indeed reduce your stress and make you feel better and more connected, bring your oxytocin. So there's a lot of other good benefits to sex, but burning calories is probably not one of them.
Well, I wouldn't say go have sex to burn calories and get in shape, but I think getting in shape and burning calories is a fucking awesome side benefit. Keep in mind, though, that double, quadruple, grande, frappuccino, mocha, whatever thing, that's probably like 1,000 calories in and of itself. So think about how long you would have to have sex just to burn that one drink that you had.
Let's talk about myth number 5. Men are more attracted to younger women. Ooh.
Okay. So this I find very interesting also. I'm going to have to go on a little rant on this one. Okay. So when I was researching this one, I was trying to find some studies, right? And I did find a study. It said in a major study of human mating done in 1989, evolutionary psychologist David Buss found that in each of the 37 cultures he surveyed, men preferred to marry younger women by an average of 2.66 years, and women preferred older men by an average of 3.42 years. Okay. When you're doing research on this, you're going to get lots of studies like that, where they're going to say, yeah, men absolutely prefer women because look, they preferred a woman that was on average 2 years younger than they were. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Plus or minus about 5 years means nothing. Nothing. It means something when you're 15 and somebody's 5 years younger. Yeah, that's a big difference. That's like, no, right? But when you're an adult and you're older, plus or minus a couple of years is still somebody that's in your age range, right? Especially like 2.66 years or even 3.4. Like you were both in high school at the same time. You grew up in the same decade. You had all the same experiences. Like that to me is basically the same.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would agree with that.
So, in my opinion, I think this myth is busted because when people say men like younger women, what do they really mean? Do they really mean 2.66 years? No, that's not actually what they mean. The big fear that women have as they age, let's say they get into their 40s-ish, even 50s, is that the men are all going to go date 20-somethings. Mm-hmm. Right? Or even 30-somethings. They're talking about dating women 20 years or 30 years younger than they are. And that does happen, of course. But the majority of men are not interested in dating somebody that much younger than them. And the statistics show that when you start looking at it, it's like 2.66 years, like whatever, right? And there are actually some stats. I didn't put them in here because I actually found a breakdown that had tons of stats. And it was showing everything from the fact that even a certain percentage of men, I think it was 13%. No, I think it was I don't remember. It was 13% or 27%. There were so many numbers in this article that I found. But it was of men who prefer older women. Right. So it's kind of all over the board. And the reason why I say that this myth is completely busted is because most men want to date people relatively close to their own age, relatively within a few years here or there. And it can be a few years older or even a few years younger. And we talked about this on 2 previous shows now. And I'm going to bring it up again one last time for you guys listening, or actually, I guess maybe it's more for the women listening. But I've had multiple conversations with men who say that they literally find that their women become more attractive as they get older. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, I might look at a young woman someone who's, I mean, at this point, they could be 20 years younger than me and still be in their mid 20s and be fully developed and like women, right? And I can look at them and think, wow, they're beautiful, they're sexy, they're hot. I bet, it'd be great to have sex with them. And then I realized that, actually the sex probably isn't very good. They haven't had much experience. They don't even know who they are yet. They don't know what they like yet, right? And then there's so much immaturity that comes. Sorry, no offense to the young women listening, but the reality is that younger people, whether they're men or women, there's a level of immaturity there that is not sexy to somebody that's older. So when I look at like, who would I actually want to date? I want a sexy, confident, mature woman who knows what she wants, knows how to ask for it, like all those things that don't really come in the young package, right? So that's why I think this myth is thoroughly busted. If you disagree with me, say so in the comments. Send us a message. Tell me that I'm full of shit. I don't know.
Yeah, we're curious. All right, let's make a little break for our sponsors Onnit here before we continue with our myths. So we want to thank Onnit for sponsoring today's show, and they have this phenomenal product called Alpha Brain. And Alpha Brain is something that helps you to get in the zone. Like those days when you've closed a big deal, won the game, made love for hours, checked everything off your to-do list, and everything was effortless and it just flowed. That's what being in the zone, in the flow state is. And Alpha Brain helps you achieve that flow state and supports other aspects of cognitive functions for better memory, focus, and mental processing. So, that way you still feel young in your head, even if your body's a little older, which is really all about what matters, right? It's how you feel. And if you want to give Alpha Brain a try, you can save up to 10% off by visiting onnit.com and using our coupon code LOVELAB. And again, it's at Onnit, ONNIT.com, using coupon code LOVELAB for 10% off.
Okay. Now, the myth everyone has been waiting for. I know you've been the whole time thus far in the show, you've been going, come on, you got to get to it. When is it going to happen? Now is the time.
Bigger is better.
When it comes to penis size.
Is that true that a big penis means better sex?
What do you think?
I don't think so. I've had big, I've had small, I've had in between, and I don't think so. Now, I think it's also how you use it and many other things.
Okay, let's go into the actual data first, and then we'll talk about personal experiences.
Okay, so bigger is better to a point, because let's face it, it's true that a certain size can feel good. In findings, what they found is that 8 inches is the optimal penis size. I find it pretty big, actually, when it comes to making women orgasm. That's what they found.
Okay, so I believe this was based on surveys.
Correct.
And I'm pretty damn sure that they were all overestimating the size. But we'll get to that. I'll let you finish and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, so okay, 8 inches, all right. That's, like you said, this was surveyed by a dating site called Big One. So, that's slightly... skewed.
Yeah.
Maybe. But anyway, the same survey showed that climax inducing capabilities drop off dramatically in anything bigger than 9 inches. So really you have an 8 to 9 inches window? Like, okay. Really?
But before all these guys out there go, oh, fuck, I'm going to be terrible in bed. No woman's ever going to want me. Keep in mind that the average penis size is literally 5 inches.
Yes. Well,
5.
So let's look and that the biggest guy, the game so far, the name was Jonah Falcom, and he has a 13.5 inches penis. I mean, can you believe this? Like, whoa, run the other direction. Anyway, skill is just as important as size per the research. So the study found that 3 inches, which is the threshold for a micro penis, aid orgasms in a quarter of women, while more than 1 in 10 women with 1 inch still hit the
1
spot.
1 in 10 men with a 1 inch penis were still able to hit the spot.
Holy moly. Well, that's what I mean. So 25% of women still are satisfied with a 3-inch penis, because I know a lot of guys, we've done several videos on penis size and stuff, and people are like, well, I have a 3-inch penis or 4-inch penis. I always tell them, like, Yes, some women will not want that and it won't work, but other women will be perfectly satisfied with that. Our G spot is not that deep. Like you reach it with a 3-inch penis. As a matter of fact, a large number of survey participants deemed girth to be crucial when it comes to experiencing rapture in the sack.
Okay, there's a bunch of things that we have to say here. First of all, we did a show on large penises. And we do have some friends that have very large penises. And we've talked to them extensively about this. And honestly, their sex lives generally are not as fulfilling as men that have more normal sized penises. Because...
Let's say average.
Yeah, sorry,
it's not that they're not normal.
That's true, because it's all across his...
Normal comes in all shapes and forms.
Thank you for that. Yes. So, but yeah, their sex life tends to actually be a bit less fulfilling than men who have average sized penises, because there are some women that are like, whoa, that thing's not coming anywhere near me. There's problems with pain sometimes where women experience pain because the penis is too big. Even if they don't experience pain, sometimes men who have exceptionally long penises, they can't actually go all the way in. So you can't literally have that sensation of like the pubic bone grinding up against the clitoris and all these other things. And so having a big penis does not necessarily mean that the sex is going to be good or any better. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that is when you see the data and when you see that women report that even men that technically fall into the category, the scientific medical definition of micro penis, which is 3 inches or less, women are still reporting that they're having orgasms.
25% of women are still reporting orgasms. So you just have to find the right 25%, not look for the 75% of others.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a few size queens out there where size is all. I've known one or two who are like, hey, if it's not X amount, forget it. But remember, average size is 5, and 25% of women are even reporting having orgasms with a micro penis. So if you fall anywhere close to that average, at that point, you're basically capable of not really giving, but a woman is perfectly capable of having an orgasm with that penis. And so remember, it's not about the size of it. It's all how you use it. And all of those other soft skills that we talked about earlier that come in, right? That presence and the trust and the safety and all those other things and the foreplay and all of that, right? Don't worry about it if you don't have an 8-inch penis.
You don't, and you're a great lover.
That's right.
Did I just say that out loud for the whole world to hear?
Yes, you did.
I love
Thank you.
What is it, 7 inches and a quarter?
Yeah, I believe it's about 7
I figured if I forgot the quarter, you would be mad at me. So.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just say 7 plus.
7 plus of happiness.
That's right. But I mean, the reality is think about it. What does the average mean? It means that 50% of the people have a penis smaller than 5 and 50% have one bigger than 5. That's what average means. So yeah, if you're anything around 5-ish, you're good to go.
Give or take 2.
And it really depends on the woman anyway. So.
All right, enough of that. Let's talk about our myth number 7. Men think about sex every 7 seconds. So you've probably heard that guys think about it all the time. What that means is that if men really thought about sex every 7 seconds, that would mean about 8,000 times per day. In reality, according to the Kinsey Institute, 54% of men say that they think about sex several times per day, and 43% said it was a few times per week. Actually, when they did the count, it came to about an average of 19 times per day, which is more reasonable. And another study found that people thought more about food, sleep, personal hygiene, social contact, time off, and even coffee than sex.
I wish I had enough free time to think about sex every 7 seconds. I really do. But there's just too much to do in life. I mean, honestly, our job is talking about sex and helping people with their sex life. And I still can't think about sex every 7 seconds. It's my work. I spend most of the day doing it, and I still can't think about it every 7 seconds. I'm thinking about posting on social media and editing and why the stupid video recording software is not working today when it used to work yesterday. And God knows how many other things that we're dealing with on a regular basis. 7 seconds. Come on now. This is almost as bad as you can't get pregnant in a hot tub.
Well, I don't know. I think one day I'd like to try to track it and know for sure, but I'm probably
We don't have a hot tub.
I'm pretty sure I think about sex about 15, 20 times a day.
Yeah.
Probably less, like off top, but I should track it one day. We should maybe make an episode on that.
That'll be a fun experiment.
Yes.
We'll do it.
Let's talk about myth number 8. Women take longer to get aroused than men. This is a big one because this is a biggie. Like it goes around and around that it takes so long for women to get aroused and men are aroused so quickly. Well, guess what? There is absolutely no difference in how quickly the genders respond to foreplay as a generalization, according to a study out of the McGill University. The researchers relied on thermal imaging to determine peak arousal rather than self-reporting. Haha, that's the difference, right? And so being in the mood is linked to stress and is as much psychological as it is physical.
Okay, so here's the thing. Women will get aroused just as quickly if you create the right circumstances and environment, right? And here's the other thing, is that one of the things I notice, especially with you, is there have been many times when you're like, I'm not really in the mood, right?
I'm not aroused anyway.
Right. And then I'll feel your vagina and it's wet and open. Which means you are actually aroused in your physical body. You're just not aroused in your mind.
Yeah, and this is really why the study showed that there's no difference, because they relied on thermal imagery rather than like self-reporting. So if they were self-reporting, most women would say, I'm not aroused. Well, they are aroused already. They just haven't made the connection. And I know that it's 100% true. Being a woman, and exactly what Kevin said, happens to me all the time. So I've learned over time to not allow my brain to dictate what I'm going to do and check in with my body. And if it feels good, if it's wet, juicy, open, let's go with it, because then the rest follows.
Exactly. And the first part of what I said is you got to create the right environment, right? So if you're doing the things that it takes beforehand, we always talk about intimacy before, during, and after. If you're doing all those things before to create that constant state of arousal that we always talk about, she's not going to need a whole lot of time. She's just not. All right, let's move on to myth number 9. Men can't have multiple orgasms. Oh man, I still hear this one. There's whole books written on this. And this one still is going around, that there's no such thing as a multiple orgasm for men. Let me just say, before Céline chimes in, I'm a man, in case you were wondering. And I absolutely have multiple orgasms all the time, every time we have sex.
Yeah, I mean, keep going, keep coming.
But no, that's the difference, right? I'm so glad you made that joke. Okay, so the difference is most men associate an ejaculation and an orgasm as being the same thing. They tend to happen at the same time. And so most men, especially older men, it's different for younger, men is kind of hard to even call them men, but young men, they can ejaculate multiple times. I mean, I can remember being 17 years old and having sex with my high school girlfriend and probably orgasming 4 or 5 times after school,
every day for months.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't really last that long and you'd ejaculate, but you'd still be hard. So let's keep going, right? And that would happen a bunch of times. That's normal for, young men. But for more mature men, what's more common is they have one orgasm / ejaculation and then they're kind of done. And that's where the myth comes from, that, you can only have one orgasm. But if you learn to separate your orgasm and your ejaculation, then you can have multiple orgasms and then choose whether or not you want to ejaculate. So we teach this in our Master Your Ejaculation program.
Sexual mastery.
And in Sexual Mastery, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you absolutely can learn it. There's tons of other people who teach it. This is one of the huge things that Mantak Chia teaches. He's one of the big proponents of that.
Powerandmastery.com if you want to learn how to do this. We'll teach you. Actually, in a study, they reported something. What was that? Researchers William Hartman and Marilyn Fithian said that 12% of men they've studied were reporting multiple orgasms. It's not that many, but it means that it's possible. And again, it's a learned skill, like Kevin said. So if you don't know about it, you probably won't try to do it. Now that you know that it's possible, you can be part of that 12% and make that 12% become higher.
Yeah, 1%, 2% is like there's some really freaky dudes out there, but 12%. And if you were to ask, 100% of men, like how many of them have heard of this or even tried to do it, you're going to get a very low percentage. So the reason why it's probably only 12% is because most guys have never even heard of it. That's why we spend so much time talking about it.
But now you have. So there's no more excuses.
That's right. Go learn how to do it.
Let's talk about our myth number 10. Most women don't watch porn. And you are so wrong. We are at the time of this episode released the beginning of 2021. And the latest study we're able to find were 2019. I don't think the 2020 have just come out yet. And anyway, 2020 was kind of weird. So I'm not sure, Matt.
I guarantee you that number is higher in 2020.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
With
Everyone.
worldwide lockdowns for almost an entire year, I guarantee you this number is higher.
Oh, I can't wait for that. So in 2019, they saw that the proportion of female visitors, and that's for Pornhub. So it's like the major porn site, like millions, billions, right, of people going there and tons of stuff on there, right? They saw that it grew to 32%.
So 32% of visitors going to Pornhub were female.
And it was an increase.
That's a third.
Yes, a third.
A third of their visitors are female.
Apparently, they like to watch a lot of lesbian stuff.
I'm not surprised by that.
No, I'm not either. But it's interesting to think that, porn is not just for men, and that there's also been a lot of new genre out there with more female director and porn actors making their own movies, maybe that are targeting women better, which might work.
I think that definitely has something to do with it, because I can honestly say from the experience with girlfriends that I've had over the years is that none of them ever really objected to watching any porn. Their objection was always that the porn was just terribly made. And I remember with a girlfriend going back 15 years ago, she was like, and they are doing this now. We should have probably got in on it back then. But back then, it was typical, old school porn. It was all made for men. It was not very sexy per se. It was just, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of thing. Plumber walks in, drops his pants, go, And she used to say, we need to have porn for women, stuff that's more aesthetically pleasing and beautiful and incorporates more sensuality and more love and that kind of stuff.
They're definitely doing this now. So that might help too. That might be why. But I also think that a lot of women, a lot of people are single. A lot of people want some stimulation or find a connection. And sometimes porn gives them that sense of that or excites them enough because they can't get there on their own.
Yeah, or they just need a release. I mean, when we look at things like, the number of people that are single, how many people are on dating sites, I'm sure there's a correlation here that the more single people there are, the more people are having trouble finding, the one or whatever, the more porn use there's going to be. I guarantee you there is a
correlation.
And a causation, not even just a correlation. All right, everybody, there you go. Those are our 10 sex myths busted.
Busted. We hope it was entertaining. We actually had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and if you have other ones that you want us to talk about and cover, maybe we will do a follow-up episode to this. Let us know in the comments, send us a message, and we would be happy to bust some more sex myths. It's like Mythbusters Sex Edition. They never did anything like that on the actual Mythbusters, but we can here on the Love Lab podcast. All right, everybody, that's all the time we have for this episode, and we'll see you next week. We hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoy this show, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends.
And for more free, exclusive content, join us in the Passion Vault at CelineRemy.com/vault. That's CelineRemy.com/vault.
Thanks for listening.
And remember, you're amazing.